Welcome to our new Drone Wars studio. Thank you to our good friends at the Drone Ultimatum, aka Allen Control System, Steve Simone, for the sign. We have a new digs. We've upgraded from the Mobile XL into something a little nicer. You know, we got some fine wood here, but we're really excited because it actually will provide a better experience for everyone who listens and watches the podcast. So if you know defense tech, you know who Palmer Luckey is, right? He's the guy who sold Oculus to Facebook for like a couple $2 billion and then started Anduril. Palmer was recently on the Joe Rogan podcast, and we're going to do something a little different today. I'm going to respond to some of the comments as a two-time defense founder that Palmer has made to kind of talk about the state of the industry.
I do think I think we're turning a corner with some of this. Did you see the new Secretary of the Army, Dan Driscoll's AUSA talk yesterday?
No, I did not.
Oh man, it might be worth pulling it up.
Okay.
He pulls up this piece of hardware, and he's like, hey, like this little thing, like it costs this insane amount of money, and we were able to make it in our own lab, just 3D print it for like $10, and so that's what we're going to be doing now. Like, and he killed the Joint Light Tactical Vehicle program. He killed this new kind of boondoggle of a robotic tank program where it was going to be millions of dollars for these robot tanks that were going to get blown up by $300 drones. And so there's just kind of been like no rules, just going in and axing all of the dumb stuff that doesn't make sense, and then taking a knife to these companies that have been charging way too much money, which is very different from the past. It's very rare. It has been a long time since you saw a secretary level official being willing to publicly contraindicate defense companies and say you're screwing over taxpayers, and it ends here. So I'm actually pretty optimistic about this across the services. I think like people are fed up.
That's an awesome clip because Palmer is doing a great job of like painting the picture of what's actually happening within the administration. Both Hegseth and Driscoll have done an incredible job of saying things need to change. We're spending way too much money for stuff that's already out of date. And we've had the pleasure of hosting Dan Driscoll in our XL a couple times at Firestorm. He loves it. Obviously, the idea of being able to build and repair legacy systems that have either incredibly long lead times or have exorbitant prices is really important. And it's not just like a cost or a lead time issue. It's actually like what happens if you don't have that part to allow you to carry out a mission, right? And so 3D printing is going to change the game. Industrial 3D printing is just being brought to the tactical edge for the US military for the first time. And I think you're going to see dramatic changes in both system availability and then the availability to build and deploy new technologies like drones in mass.
Ideally, would it be that all this national security stuff was handled by a private company? Would that be like ideal in terms of efficiency, in terms of technological innovation, implementing ideas?
I think that, look, like private...
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying like...
No. So look,
there's problems with running a government.
I mean, look, I've got a strong opinion here. I think that what you want, it's not a private company. It needs to be done by competing entities, right? And so if it's private...
Right.
And at least one of them has to be private. So like, I don't even really mind the government doing something if they're not being favored.
All right. So the question's really simple. It's should national security be handled by private companies? And I think this is a very nuanced question. We've had a lot of private security companies that we've used over the years. And there's been some issues that have ended in scandal. I think the reality, though, is that warfare is moving super quickly. And if the government can't adjust to the speed of what warfare looks like today, private companies might actually have to step in and provide support until the government adjusts to these new realities of what we're facing.
So you could make this missile at mass scale in any GM facility, in any Ford facility. And that's really important for us because if you can only make your missiles in this specialized factory that took you 10 years to set up, well, what in the world do you do when you need 100 times more of those missiles made every day? Right. You're just kind of screwed. And so the United States has been doing better at this. I think like the Air Force is doing better, the Navy's doing better, the Army's doing better. Like the Army has a whole transformation initiative where they want all of their new weapon systems to be highly manufacturable at scale using real industrial capacity. And working with private companies from the beginning to make sure that they want to make sure that any new system that they are building can be built by the American industrial economy, not only these specialized aerospace technicians, of which there are just not that many.
What Palmer's doing here and what he's talking about, I think, is really important for the entire ecosystem, because if you're really going to go build, 100 times more missiles a day, as he says, what you really need to do is harness the power of small business innovation. So with the Barracuda, the product he mentions, you need 10 tools to put together this cruise missile. That's how everything should be built across the entire defense ecosystem. And I think you see a lot of small startups taking this approach and using COTS parts and COTS kind of equipment to be able to assemble or connect new systems and payloads. It's absolutely the way in which we have to build things moving forward, because that is how our adversaries are doing it right now.
But another thing China does is they actually require many of their commercial vessels that have nothing to do with the military to build to military standards for two reasons. One, because it means that all the shipyards are being built to handle military standards. Two, they plan on basically, they're going to press all of these civilian vessels into service. So they're saying, hey, you have this roll-on, roll-off car ferry that's used for moving cars around, for delivering cars to the United States. You have to build it to deck plate pressures that allow us to roll a bunch of tanks onto it so that we can then use it to deliver tanks to Taiwan from the Chinese mainland. And they're just requiring people to do that. And so even their civilian shipping fleet is actually this kind of military ghost fleet just sitting in the open, pretending to be civilian. But the moment the shit hits the fan, it becomes part of the war machine. And so they've done a great job integrating in a way the United States has not.
So I think there's a couple of reasons, and I'm glad, Palmer's highlighting the Little Blue Men, which is what they call the Chinese maritime fleet. It's a really interesting approach, right? So China is just now building a blue water navy, right? I think they launched their third carrier or commissioned it last week. And so they have nowhere near the ability to reach like the United States does with its current blue water navy. But by kind of harnessing the power and forcing all of these other vessels to be built to military standards, you basically can project power in a much different way, because you can bring thousands or tens of thousands of boats to bear that are actually not like just commercial vessels. They're basically military vessels. So what does that mean? It means that we have to be thinking in a creative way for how do you hedge against that many boats showing up and, enforcing embargo against Taiwan, right? Or disrupting fishing and shipping. They've actually been doing this quite aggressively. Some places in South America, there's some unbelievable videos of the Chinese fishing fleets showing up into fishing grounds and states and basically daring them to stop what they're doing. So again, mass and scale has a power of its own. And we need to be thinking that if there's going to be a conflict, it's not about exquisite systems. It's not about the $200, $300 million boats that we build. It could be, tens of thousands of boats that cost $1 million each, but that are carrying sensors and EW payloads and maybe even weapons. It's a pretty clever move the Chinese have taken.
My opinion is that the United States, we don't want to get into a shooting war ourselves, right? We want to avoid that. The United States needs to stop being the world police, stop sending our people overseas to die for other countries. And instead, we need to become the world's gun store. We need to say, hey, look, what do you need to do to be a good gun store, right? You got to keep stuff in stock. You got to keep things on the shelves. You need to be reasonably priced. You need to not arbitrarily cut off allies. And could you imagine if you went to a gun store and they told you, Joe, we're going to sell you this gun, but you can't use it over in that county. You can only use it in this one. And we're going to tell you exactly how you can use it. And we're going to be micromanaging you. And we're going to be taking responsibility for how you use your gun. I mean, that would never work. You would never want to work with them. You'd say, I'm going to go to a different store. I'm going to go buy something. And that's what some nations are doing. Like they're going to Russia. They're going to China. They're going to India and buying systems because we're going in and telling them our weapons are expensive. They're never in stock. We never deliver them to you. And also we're going to tell you what to do with them if we ever do give you to them. Like, did you know that Taiwan is $20 billion behind on arms deliveries from the United States? They have $20 billion in orders that have not been delivered. These are not things they would maybe like to have. They need these yesterday. China could move in tomorrow.
Should the U.S. become the world's gun store? That's kind of what Palmer's getting at here. And I agree. I mean, look, Israel, in a sense, has become the world's weapons store. They've done an incredible job cornering the market. They build a lot of, good and affordable technology. The U.S. can easily get there. It's going to take kind of a loosening and a rethinking of how ITAR is enforced and how we do foreign sales. I know this administration's working on some of that right now. But if your thesis is the U.S. doesn't want to put its troops in harm's way anymore, we're going to have to give our allies the hedge technologies that allow them to defend themselves, right? And so that's where, if I'm looking at it from a Firestorm lens, that's where being able to move a factory and then integrate local payloads into what you build gives you an unfair advantage over other people. But it goes back to the comment I made earlier that, like, no matter who you are, if you're building stuff using COTS products, right? So off-the-shelf products, easily available products, you're going to be able to mass produce things and therefore bring down the cost. The other advantage that selling overseas offers to companies is, while there's dysfunction in Washington and the government closes and opens, the overseas markets, for the most part, don't have the same type of issue. So it can help even out revenue and keep companies afloat as Washington does what Washington does.
Thanks for listening to the Drone Wars podcast. Each week, we bring you fascinating conversations with leaders shaping the future of air, sea, land, and space technologies. Catch new episodes wherever podcasts can be found. Until then, we'll see you next time.